Thank you all so much for coming. While we talk about why can't I just Google it? And of course, as librarians, I'm sure you have really different answers to that, but we'll arm you with a little bit more data here. My name is Mariska Conley. I am the Director of Partnerships and Communications on the CloudSource product, and I'm also a former academic librarian myself. My partner here for this presentation is Rick Branham. He's our VP of Pre-Sales Academic and Content Solutions. So he's our academic guy. Excuse me. So Google is so synonymous with information seeking that sending a friend a link to letmegooglethiscom has become kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of telling someone to take initiative, to do their research themselves. So and I've done it to my children many times, while independent information seeking is an admirable trait, the potential pitfalls when using Google as your go-to is obvious to any educator or librarian. But you just have to look at the usage to see how prevalent Google really is. So let's start with the pros of the search engine, because I do want to give Google a fair shake on this. Google remains the leading search engine worldwide with a whopping 80% of the market share over the last 12 months. And it's easy to see why that is. It is available to everyone with an internet connection. It at least appears to offer open access to information. And there's a staggering amount of information on every topic imaginable. There aren't any complicated query builders or filters you have to mess with. There's no logins, at least until you hit a paywall. And Google Scholar contains a lot of academic records, though that paywall tends to come up a lot more often. Well, all that sounds great. So why not just Google it? Well, dead-end results. A lot of what you find on Google and Google Scholar isn't going to lead to any high-quality resources or articles. And it isn't always what the description tells you. Metadata can be outdated, incorrect, or even deliberately falsified. There's so many results with little curation that it can be hard to find what you're even looking for. And while initiating a search isn't complicated, natural language with few limiters and difficult to understand advanced search syntax is only going to get you so far. I think there are probably very few people who know that you can put a minus sign right before a word to exclude those results, or use colon plus domain to limit it just like an edu domain. It's just not obvious or intuitive at all to search using Google. And the information on Google is really hard to vet for reliability and accuracy, because literally anybody can put a website up and it can look very, very legitimate. Also, Google Scholar has to be taken with a healthy dose of skepticism at times also. So a 2019 article in Cytometrics looked at academic search engines and their bibliographical databases, including Big Four, EBSCOhost, ProQuest, Scopus, and Web of Science, as well as publicly available search engines like Microsoft Academic, which retired 2 years later, Semantic Scholar, and of course Google Scholar. And they determined that Google Scholar's size was often actually underestimated, and the number of query hits were as much as 55% higher than every other search engine. However, they lack transparency and consistency. So Google Scholar has an unrivaled amount of data. I'm not arguing that, but the way they use it is a black box. The behavior, it really hasn't changed in the last 4 years since that survey was done. In fact, despite the emphasis that Google Scholar puts on citations, and you see that when you go in it's very prominently listed. And of course, a lot of academic and research institutions do factor in Google Scholar citations and the Google Scholar page. But a study in Archive, which is the physics open access archive, published in February of this year, examined methods for artificially inflating those citation counts that you get in Google Scholar. Excuse me a moment. Including looking at, I'm so sorry, y'all, including looking at citation boosting services. So since Google Scholar algorithms heavily look at these citations when they calculate relevancy listings, it's really easy to imagine how a whole search engine can be compromised on that point alone, but it's so well understood how to boost those citations. And in grabbing this screenshot of Google Scholar's landing page, the algorithms accidentally made one of my points for me. So Google Scholar knows my research interests and suggested an article. but clicking on it took me immediately to a paywall and a moment of frustration, which is probably very familiar to a lot of your patrons. And many of you, your users, especially new students and those who are not experienced searchers, often rely on Google Scholar as a primary search tool. So let's look at what we know about information seeking behaviors in teens and young people. I love to look at these studies. Since those age ranges are often what we have coming into colleges and universities, so much of these concepts can apply to non-traditional students and patrons from all walks of life as well, because they're all kind of coming from that inexperienced researcher perspective. Google isn't just the first point of research for many inexperienced students. It's the only one they feel comfortable with. And with shrinking educational budgets and a focus on outcomes, library instruction often falls by the wayside in a lot of colleges, not correcting that habit early on. I found LibGuide after LibGuide instructing students on tips and tricks for using Google more effectively. The library profession knows that students are going to use it, so they try and mitigate that as much as possible by at least helping them use it well. And for our non-traditional researchers, those who might not have grown up with digital resources or haven't gone beyond a secondary education, Google's familiar and safe to them. A bit of public information about Google. Their search algorithm is not transparent. Not surprising. Google cites the reason for this being spammers taking advantage of a paper in PageRank in 1999 that explained their search algorithm. But the fact is there are entire industries built around how to maximize your visibility in Google search results. They use crawlers to automatically visit websites and follow links to add them to Google search indexes rather than curating the content like a librarian would or a database. They do have a process for managing spam, but it's not a smart system, and it mostly looks for pages trying to use tricks like repeating a word over and over again to get it to come to the top of search results. They don't verify, and it's just basically gaming the system. And you can, of course, bypass the crawlers and search algorithms and get your pages pushed right to the top if you have the funds to buy ad space or know how to work the algorithm to your benefit. I was just talking to somebody here in the audience right before everyone came in about the fact that people who are in the know not to click on those first few links because they're always going to have sponsored right next to them. If you've got money, you can put your stuff right there at the top without a problem. So let's run a quick Google search for a baseline. See if this actually starts like it's supposed to. Oh, it didn't. So sorry, y'all. I do. I'm just going to bring up the right tab here.
No, I'm going to just click on the video.
Just going right back to my slide. Sorry, y'all. Yeah. That should hopefully work and get it started. This is what happens when you put embedded video sometimes. It just doesn't want to work with its secrets. So, no, it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't want to start for me. Oh, there we go. Brilliant. Okay. I just wanted to, and many of you have done this. I came in here doing a natural language search for information seeking behaviors in students. It seemed appropriate to what I was looking at the time. And of course, with Google, you get your Google Scholar recommendations at the top. But it's very obvious from a glance to anyone who's in the know. The filters are a mix and match of formats and subject headings. You really don't have any active filters except those related to commerce. It's like shopping and travel. It's nothing useful at all if you're looking for information, unless you want to book flights, which I don't think we want to do at this point. And there is the ability to do some very limited, limiting time frames. So I can look for the past year, for example, in this. So let me, in looking at the search results, we've got a couple that look very promising right at the top, Springerling, and then there's a huge mix of things in here that some of which are academic and some aren't. I've got a LinkedIn page in here that's working with somebody who maybe did a talk on it at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and open one of these. This is a digital collection. And this one was, a win. I got it downloaded immediately. So that's always fantastic. And I can see a little bit of academic information about this student article. And then the one at the very top immediately takes me to a paywall. And you're going to get a mix of these things that are irrelevant, things that cost money off the bat, and then, sure, there's some scattered good information here. Hop over to the next one. So as with the Google search engine, Google Scholar's a bit vague on their relevancy ranking, describing the process as weighing the full text of each document, where it was published, who it was written by, as well as how often and how recently it's been cited in other scholarly literature. And I pulled this directly off their website. That's the most they will give you on relevancy. But the content is generally scholarly, and they're transparent about things like citations, although we know at this point from some of those studies that can be influenced. Their publication information and their authors, and where they find the sources. And there's information about the contributors and authors as well. In fact, Google Scholar profiles are quite serious business in some places. So let's also, if I put this to work, run a quick Google Scholar one. I even put in there myself, sort of waiting really slow. There we go. I'm going to do the same search on information so you can be but I'm going to use Boolean in here since I do have that. Again, I'm trying to give Google a fair shake here. I can see my own screen. You've got a little bit more on your filters. You can limit to two date ranges, which is great because if you default just to the default relevancy, it's going to be based on those citations, which the problem with that is that you're going to get not the most recent, most relevant articles. You're going to get things that are cited the most. And very often, we regularly do a search on artificial intelligence. You're going to get things that are 20, 30 years old because they've been around a long time and cited a lot. But again, I've got a fairly decent mix. I can go and look at related articles. I can see what formats things are available. And most of the time, if I click on these where it says a PDF, most of the time I do get a PDF. But let me click on a couple of these and show you what I'm looking at. This one here did give me a full text, which is great. I, of course, cannot limit to open access in any way, shape, or form. So this one, of course, you can see by the little icon there is an open access document. So I got lucky on that first one. Second link here, the Rats Don't Run the City. This actually took me to an abstract for a conference presentation, but I've got nothing to download. I can't see what that conference presentation is about. I can only see the abstract on it. Another one in here on the correlation analysis of relationship between demographic variables and information seeking. This, I think, would confuse a lot of students. The page is partly in English, partly isn't. It's really hard to tell where the download is or if it's an academic article at all. I finally see I've got a blinking, potentially a PDF here for this. But there's no clear way to really get to the full text. And then here's another one. And this one is ProQuest. I would immediately go, yes, I trust that. I trust ProQuest. What have we got here? And I left this in here on the cookies because this happens a lot. But there's no obvious way to download this article. I can't read the full text here. I've got an abstract. I've got some information. I know who my authors are. But again, I go to a conference blog between institutions. So if your students are relying on this, if your patrons are relying on Google Scholar, they're going to spend a lot of time hitting dead ends. They're going to spend a lot of time hitting irrelevant results and generally just being frustrated. So it's easy to dismiss Google as simply ineffective as a research tool, or at least frustrating as a research tool. But a better understanding of how it works with and against users can help serve you and, have it serve you and not the other way around. So at its core, search algorithm is just a set of instructions that determines how results are generated and what's included and how it's ranked. So what's considered are usually elements from the metadata or keywords from the websites and documents. So things like keywords, dates of publication, number of citations, controlled vocabulary like subject headings, and the formats such as like your journal articles, as well as a number of other possible criteria. We already know that Google Scholar's algorithm looks at keywords and date of publications and specifically the number of citations for an article, but we can understand a lot more about how Google functions from looking at how it treats different searchers. It's no secret that when it comes to Google and other tech companies that provide free services, you are the product in this case. So by that I mean that information about your behaviors, your interests, the demographics you belong to, income levels, shopping habits, searching habits. All of these are the things that can and are monetized in order to connect you to goods and services that you might have otherwise not purchased. So along the way, you're training your browser via cookies and tracking data to know what it is that you like to see and read. You see this in Facebook and Instagram, for example, and the people and pages you visit more often are offered to you at the top of your feed. This kind of self-curation happens on a larger scale when you use the same browser logged into a Google account every day to do your information seeking. The result of this process is that you end up in filter bubbles, wherein the things that you see are heavily influenced by what you've interacted with in some way or another in the past. So this can lead to baked-in bias in results. If you're interested in sustainable electricity, you might see more ads for solar panels or electric cars, but it can be problematic when you start going down, for example, conspiracy theory routes and end up on results pages that are full of unreliable news sources that Google thinks you want to see. Your choice in keywords used to conduct a Google search matters greatly. They do in most search platforms, but controlled vocabulary, subject headings, and things like that go a long way to mitigating the damage you can do with just open language. And so does the cultivated nature of the kind of resources that you'd find in a scholarly database or discovery platform. Google's wide open when it comes to content creation, and metadata standards are few and far between. So here's an example of two side-by-side searches and their top results. In both examples, I wanted to find information about voting rights of people in Virginia who are not U.S. citizens. But I'm approaching it from very different perspectives. So the first example, I'm using keywords voter registration laws and non-citizen. The results reflect largely factual, authoritative sets of results, including 3 hits from the Department of Elections referencing official guidelines and a legal code of Virginia link highlighting the relevant passages. So I have one Heritage Foundation hit, which is a well-known conservative think tank, but otherwise my results are fairly neutral. If I use the keywords illegal immigrant and voter fraud, I get a completely different, much more reactionary set of results with a lot of bias. So I still get that Code of Virginia law, but here it serves to underscore the scare tactics and cherry-picked information from these other sources. And there might be some factual information among these, but it will come with a clear political leaning and message. This is just a mild example, and researchers in a variety of disciplines, from ethnographers to information scientists, have run similar experiments around the use of language, and without standardized vocabulary and embedded resources, language choice combined with information harvesting can quickly trap researchers in a bubble with limited and misleading information. Okay. And then one more little point I want to make. When it comes to filter bubbles and the fact that you actively are on the internet and tracked, to Google, this is worth money. Getting the right ad in front of the right person is valuable. So unsurprisingly, the bulk of Google's profit comes from advertising revenue. I took this screenshot here, or this data here from the 2024 first quarter earnings report for Alphabet Inc., and that's the holding company that owns Google. And the orange wedge here in this chart is the collective Google advertising revenue from sources such as Google Scholar, YouTube ads, and the Google network. And it's an impressive 76% rather of their ad revenue. And straight from the Google's ad help page is an article explaining that Google networks where ads show to the target demographic include everything from maps to search results to partnered sites. Advertising dollars are the lifeblood of Google. And this blinking shoe ad here at the bottom here kind of, again, illustrated my point for me while I was looking at information. I looked at a pair of heels from this company 3 months before, and they were still popping that ad up every opportunity they got, trying to get me to go back to that page. Right, and one more quick feature I think is worth pointing out is that we've had a lot of talk about AI at this conference right now. Google indicated in that same press release with their Q1 earnings that they intend to consolidate their AI teams and further accelerate their process in AI, which is fine. There's a lot of valid uses for AI. In fact, we use a few AI products ourselves to improve our metadata. But the way that AI has functioned in the Google search results has had some very questionable results. Among them, the suggestion to use Elmer's glue to keep cheese on pizza. The claim that Barack Obama was the first Muslim president. how many rocks does a geologist suggest you eat in a day? And the list of health benefits associated with giving wine to children. And I actually just looked this one up. The off-the-wall, I know they're hilarious. The off-the-wall AI overview results have been shared, widely in the social media space since they rolled out. To their credit, Google is correcting them as they come up, but some of them are, harmful and downright wrong. They just don't. AI right now, when it comes to summarizing the vast amount of information in Google, does not have the sophistication to really tell what's satire and what's real when it comes to information. So it's very funny, but potentially dangerous. Right. The thing is, you don't have to rely on Google for a lot of unreliable information. There's a lot of AI out there, a lot of high quality free information on the internet. The lack of sources is not the problem when it comes to researching on Google. So let's talk really quickly before I hand this over to Rick about how much OA is out there. There's a lot of it. 65 actually million scholarly resources are open access, including articles, books, and data sets. Over 51 million of these are scholarly articles. 61% of all scholarly articles published since 2017 are OA. And I think at last count, 3.8 million articles were published in 2023 alone, making 67% of all scholarly articles published last year freely available. In fact, there's been some studies that suggest that with the growing rate of growth in OA articles, we're looking at potentially close to 100% OA by 2040. But only 16% of this is indexed in the DOAJ. So if you're turning that on in your discovery layer, you're missing out on 84%. And we see this across all of subject headings and top journals. This is the top 20 journals ranked by Scimago. And most of them are more than half OA or completely OA. And we see this discipline by discipline. So 102,000 journals publishing OA content at last check, and I think it might be a little higher now. And of course, these are the same publishers that have always published them. They're not lowering their standards. So they will always want to publish the most interesting research from the best authors. So we are getting a lot of high quality OA out there. And it's not just STEM. It's important to point out that there's been a lot of growth in the humanities, social sciences. The open access movement has gained a lot of momentum in recent years, and more researchers, institutions, and funders are recognizing the benefits of making their work freely available to the public. Unfortunately, it's hard to find. There's often barriers to access. For example, it's not going to show up in your discovery layer if it's not in the DOAJ. And there's still a lot of misunderstandings, I think, out there about what is considered to be high quality in the OA field. But open access articles are peer reviewed and high quality, and it's more than just the DOAJ fully open articles. All right, let me turn this over to Rick, because I think I may have eaten into his time a little. My apologies. To talk a little bit about a better way to find this open access information.
No, very interesting stuff. Thank you, Mariska. Thank you all for coming. I'm just going to walk through how CloudSource can help solve with this conundrum of finding information using Google. So CloudSource is a new content platform from SirsiDynix. Traditionally, our business has been integrated library systems and discovery applications. So this is our first foray into the content market. This is part of our Blue Cloud ecosystem, which is our library services platform. And CloudSource provides comprehensive aggregation, enrichment, management, and discovery of e-resources of all library types for all types of e-resources for all library types. So Mariska mentioned CloudSource OA. That was first launched in December 2021, so fairly recently. And we're up to about 65 million resources. Again, these cover articles, proceedings, reports, data sets, etc. We also have open ebooks and e-textbooks from a variety of vetted partners, as well as open educational resources, or OER. So it's pretty robust and constantly expanding collection of open resources. Now, CloudSource Plus was just launched this summer, so in July of this year. And CloudSource Plus expands the index to include subscription content of all types, on-demand fulfillment options. We added more than 1 billion resources to our index with CloudSource Plus. So these are non-scholarly papers, as well as magazines, trade journals. non-OA scholarly resources, not non-scholarly, but magazines and trade journals, non-OA ebooks and textbooks, multimedia formats, news sources. So really the whole gamut of resources that an academic library would want to include in an index. So we're not just aggregating available metadata and passing that along. We've actually built a whole platform of smart tools that enrich the metadata pretty significantly, adding things like additional publication information. Mariska mentioned some AI tools that add field of study headings to metadata, subject headings from Mesh, Library of Congress, abstracts, author information, citations, web reviews, related materials. So we're really trying to improve the search experience by making a more fulsome record that gets indexed. So let's just take a quick look. I'm going to do a search of just the OA collection. And again, about 65 million resources, but also all the ebooks and OER. And I'll step through some of the features as we go along. But you see here that you can search on a specific field or just a general keyword search. I'm searching for climate change. And taking a look here, we've got 300,000 hits. We do offer a Wikipedia widget, which gives you some grounding on what you've searched. Also offers disambiguation if you have a broad term. You can use your filters to narrow down. You see that there's all kinds of resources included in the index, not just articles. You can limit by the peer-reviewed status, by the publication date, field of study, again, employing AI tools to expand that. It's been super helpful. Language, Creative Commons license, mesh headings where applicable. Also some OER filters on course level, material type, primary user, and then you can filter by publication. I can also, let's go ahead and click on peer review, yes, and then let's choose the most, let's choose things that are related to hurricanes and climate change, certainly applicable to the Charleston area. And then we're going to limit to recent articles, 2024, 2023. You see at the top of the list here, there's an article, Science Advances. By the way, there's this little link you can click on to capture the search strategy and drop that onto a LibGuide or to an LMS page. What I'm pointing to are the resource stats that are listed on every article. So at a glance, you can see whether it's peer-reviewed and the CC license info, the number of citations, buzz. These are web reviews on the article. One click takes me to full text. So no authentication barriers whatsoever. Every OA hit has a link to full text. And it's the most recent article. There may be other links, but we capture the most recent PDF as the primary link. Took me straight to it. You can also add that to a list. You can build a citation. There's a built-in citation manager. More than 2,500 citation styles you can turn on or off. You can add style notes. You can look to a style guide. Your users can even mark up the annotation before capturing it. So there's quite a bit of functionality. You can change the styling on any of these, add a hyperlink, for instance. So really mark this up how you want before capturing it into my clipboard. You can even export it to RefWorks or Mendeley or what have you, whatever the user might be using. You can permalink this if you want to bookmark or share it with others. And then there's also integration with several Third Iron products like Browsing and LibKey. And if you're subscribing to those particular products. And let's take a look at the detailed view of this. Just want to point out, this kind of illustrates the enhancement that we're doing. So you can see in these tabs across the top, all that stuff we're adding to the record. Now I'm flipping through some of the detailed views just to show you on this next record the benefits of the AI work we're doing to add field of study information. It's quite a lot of good information. Lots of links. You may see pre-pubs on some of these. You got the abstract, author notes, and affiliations. You've got referenced articles, cited by articles, published with articles, so lots of related materials. I can click right through to a reference. I can even open them all with one click. So it pops them open into a separate tab. Super handy for a researcher who may find some really good things in the related materials. Plus, these are web reviews, so often you might find a good article written about the one you're considering, and that could sway your decision to include it in your research. So let's close that. Now let's take a look at an advanced search. So your students may not be able to construct a Boolean query, but there's a Boolean query builder. You can choose their field, put in their terms, their operators, and simply launch a search. So I'm doing a title keyword Great Salt Lake and general keyword shrinking or water level or desiccation. I live in Salt Lake City, and the Great Salt Lake is in danger of drying up and turning the valley into a hellscape. So I have that to look forward to. You can edit the query and remove terms if you want. All right, so easy to use query. You've got a publication finder. This allows me to search at the publication level. You can even search on collections that you've curated. We have a collection manager on the back end that lets you build sub-collections of materials. And I can limit my query to that. I can do a search of the publication I'm looking for. And on my hit list here, I see this is the one I wanted. I can click that little icon to show me every article from that publication. I can also go into detail on that if I want. See more bibliographic information, filter down to closed or open access articles, see my subscriptions, including embargo information, search within that journal. All right, so again, we've tried to make this highly functional, intuitive, easy to use, and there are all my articles on climate change for those particular years. And there is an A to Z browse as well if I wanted to browse through. If I can't remember the exact title, but I kind of remember what it started with, that might give you some satisfaction. Just really quickly, I think Mariska did a good job at illustrating some of the pitfalls you may encounter. I'm searching Google Scholar for this term, artificial intelligence or large language models. So simple Boolean construction. And what you see here on the results is, again, that first hit, I was able to get to the full text. But it's from 2017. This next one's from 2004. And it's trying to force me to buy this article, even though it is actually open access. This next one, 2019. Again, if I'm not savvy enough to use the filters to limit by pub date, your users are going to be quickly frustrated with seeing a lot of old stuff. This is a book on 1992. From 1992, how helpful will that be on your research on artificial intelligence? All of these are pretty old. Here's one from 2024, and I can actually get to the full text on that one, which is, kind of not the norm. Anyway, by contrast with CloudSource, this is all known open access content from peer-reviewed sources. So we work with Crossref to identify things that are more or less been vetted as peer-reviewed. Quite a big number of hits, about 1.7 million. You can hit user filters, but again, a lot of students won't use the filters. So every one of these hits on the top of the list are from 2024, again, from quality, valid sources. Every single one of them, one click opens up the full text. So your users are not going to be frustrated with all these dead ends. And again, we're expanding the metadata. Very limited metadata that you see in Google, certainly not enough to help you decide whether this is a valid source for you. Lots of related materials. Again, we're really focusing on making this user experience simple and easy for any user to pick up and run with. All right. So takeaways from today's presentation. You are the product. I think Mariska made that compelling case. Anybody that has used Google for a while knows that you are going to see results that are not neutral, but they're tailored to you, things that live in your bubble. The results are not curated, meaning that they're not curated to quality peer-reviewed materials. You're going to see any old junk come up in a Google search, and a lot of it is increasingly nefarious. You're going to encounter a lot of paywalls and dead ends. We've all experienced that, and especially when you're looking for quality peer-reviewed data, you're going to get a lot of those dead ends. And the search function is limited. There are a few filters you can employ, but for the most part, it is a super basic search that take a lot of work to try to get to some quality info, especially if you're the average student who's not typically looking for a particular article. They're looking for articles on a certain topic, and they're going to encounter just a lot of garbage. And we've got a better way of handling that. So I think we've got, are we out of time? We got 4 minutes?
4 minutes for Q&A.
Are there any questions? We're happy to handle it.